Guys, Mike with Fights of Friends. Happy 4th of July weekend. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am, and I'm really looking forward to UFC 226, Miocic versus Cormier. Let's just jump right into this card because this main card is on fire. Paul Felder versus Mike Perry, just recently announced. I'm super excited about this fight. I know a lot of you guys are. Mike Platinum Perry, of course, 11-3. He's won 100% of his fights. 100% of his wins by knockout. 11 knockouts. He is, however, on a 2-fight losing streak, dropping decisions to Max Griffin and Santiago Ponzinibbio. Two tough guys in a tough division, but the UFC can be very unforgiving. Perry, of course, has big knockout wins over Young Lim, Jake Ellenberger, and Alex Reyes. So the UFC kind of built this hype machine. After back-to-back losses, we're going to find out, is this more hype or is there some substance to this? I think there is some substance behind this. I don't know if we've solved the puzzle of Mike Perry, but UFC's not doing him any favors by throwing him in there against Paul Felder. This guy's an absolute killer. Paul Felder's 15-3, 10 knockouts and a sub. Last competed when defeated Charles Oliveira by second round TKO due to elbow strikes. He's got victories over Josh Berkman, Darren Cruikshank. If you want to watch an impressive knockout, go on YouTube, look up Paul Felder versus Danny Castillo. Second round, Paul Felder gets a knockout by spinning back fist. Rare occurrence that somebody knocks somebody out of the UFC by spinning back fist. Only happened a couple of times. Paul Felder, absolute animal. So like I said, I don't know if Mike Perry's all hype. I don't think he is. I just feel that Paul Felder has a higher fight IQ. I think he's an excellent striker. I think he's better than Perry in just about all facets of the game. Perry can get him into a war. Obviously, Perry can catch him. Possibly gets a late knockout. I do think this is a sleeper for fight of the night, and I think Paul Felder pulls it out by unanimous decision. Alright guys, if you're new to this channel, please hit that subscribe button. Everybody please hit that like button. Again, happy 4th of July. Let's jump into the next fight on this card. Uriah Hall versus Paulo Costo. This is an incredible matchup. It's almost all incredible matchups on this card, though. If you're going to get one pay-per-view this year, this is the one I would recommend. 2 title fights, come on. Paulo Costo, he's 11-0. He's finished every one of his fights, 10 by knockout. His impressive second-round knockout of Johnny Hendricks bumped him up in the rankings, and Johnny Hendricks retired because of it recently, as you might have seen. 9 of his wins have been first-round finishes. But Uriah Hall may be his biggest test to date if Johnny Hendricks wasn't. We've all been pretty hard on Uriah Hall since we felt he should have easily walked away with the championship in TUF in that contract. We felt he underachieved. We felt that he should have dominated Kelvin Gastelum. That Kelvin Gastelum was overmatched. Since then, we've seen Kelvin Gastelum become one of the top contenders at 185. He's knocking on the door for a title shot any minute, in any match here. Then, of course, in his UFC debut after TUF, he got friendly with John Howard, dropped a split decision. Okay, he shouldn't have lost that fight. Let's be honest there. We were hard on him, but yeah, he should have beat that dude. Dana White at times has said Uriah Hall lacks killer instinct. I said that after the John Howard fight. He seemed to have found it in 2015 when he knocked out Gegard Mousasi in the second round, though. Don't forget, right after that, he went the distance with Robert Whittaker, a guy who knocked out Derrick Brunson, Jacare Souza, and Brad Tavares. So the guy's got a solid chin for sure. Just like UFCs and odd makers have short memories, Hall was able to forget a 3-fight losing streak long enough to knock out Krzysztof Joko in the second round for a performance of the night bonus. Odds makers have Costa a 4-1 favorite. But Uriah Hall's not a guy that gets knocked out. To me, that seems kind of ridiculous. If I were betting on this, if someone gave me $1,000 to bet on anything, I would bet it on Uriah Hall at 4-1 odds. That being said, if everything's even and I have to pick a winner, I'm going to take Costa by knockout. I think he is on fire. I think he does have a lot of power, and I think he has a good shot at overwhelming Uriah Hall if I have to make my best guess. Let me know what you guys think, though, and look out for the debut of my show if I gave you $1,000. And we'll go through some betting odds and what exactly we might do for UFC 226. Let me know what you think down there, and look for the rest of the previews of these fights coming soon. Hello friends, let's jump into the next fight on this UFC 226 card. Hope you're enjoying this extended preview of UFC 226. If you're new here, like I've said, please hit that subscribe button. Everybody hit that like button. Let's jump into this. Gokhan Saki versus Khalil Rountree. A lot of people are probably wondering why this is on the main card, especially when you see Gokhan Saki's MMA career at 1-1. If you don't know who Gokhan Saki is, he's a kickboxing legend. 15 years in the game, 81-16, 58 knockouts. He walked away from the game, glory belt in the hand, after knocking out Tyrone Spahn in the first round and Nathan Corbett in the first round. Guy's an absolute murderer on his feet. His one MMA fight before the one loss was in 2004 when he was 20 years old. He had absolutely no MMA experience. So when he walked away from kickboxing, he started training MMA into 2016, beginning in 2017, burst onto the scene in the UFC with a first-round knockout and performance of the night last September against Henrique de Silva. So you don't want to stand with this guy. Khalil Rountree Jr., 7-3. He found his way into the UFC through TUF, the season Joanna versus Claudia. I lost in the finale, got all the way to the finale. After losing his UFC debut after TUF, the top prospect Tyson Pedro, he knocked out Paul Craig and Daniel Jolly, both in the first round. He last stepped into the octagon last December when he dropped a unanimous decision to Michael Alexsevak. Given Khalil's willingness to strike and his lack of additional skills, I think Gokhan wins this. I'm going to take him by a first-round knockout. I think it's going to be exciting, and I think we're going to gain some Gokhan Saki fans in this fight. Let me know what you guys think. Remember, Mark Hunt started out as a K1 fighter too. Took him a little time to get his bearing, but so did Alistair Overeem. A lot of guys that came out of kickboxing and K1. But let me know what you guys think down below, and let's get into the next fights on this card. Look for those other videos. I'll see you soon. Alright friends, Micah Fights with Friends here on this eve of our nation's birthday, July 3rd. Breaking down the next fight on UFC 226, Miocic versus Cormier. Michael Chiesa versus Anthony Pettis. Very tight matchup. Michael Chiesa, of course, we know from The Ultimate Fighter. He was recently riding a 3-fight win streak. He had capped off by a performance of the night and second-round submission of Beneil Dariush, top up-and-coming prospect. Then he ran into a real top contender, title contender Kevin Lee, and was subbed last June. Chiesa is another one of those tough alumni who we've seen really grow in the sport. Anthony Pettis, of course, he's had his ups and downs. 3 years. It's been 3 years since he lost his title by decision to RDA, 2015. After losing a frustrating split decision to eventual champion Eddie Alvarez. After that, he would lose a unanimous decision to Edson Barbosa. So all of a sudden, he's on a 3-fight losing streak. He'd rebound with a sub win over Charles Oliveira. Then he would get a title shot against Max Holloway. Of course, that's a very tough draw. Max finished him in the third round. Has the game passed him up? I don't know. We'll see. But his next fight, he would win a unanimous decision over Jim Miller, followed by a war against Dustin Poirier. Absolute phenomenal fight of the night. He would get the fight of the night bonus. Unfortunately, he would taste defeat by knockout in the third round. What Pettis' mental state is like right now, it's hard to say. He's obviously got a lot of talent. The 155-pound division, toughest competitive division in combat sports, I believe, by far. You got a line of 20 killers that, the average person would never want to mess with. If you're in the top 20, you're doing probably pretty fucking phenomenal. Michael Chiesa is a minus 160 favorite coming into this. All this could go either way. Chiesa's only finished by submission. Always finishes by submission. Pettis has never been subbed. So I'm going to take Pettis by late knockout or unanimous decision. Just because, like I said, if Pettis is going to lose, it's always been by submission. And Chiesa's never knocked anybody out. So I'm going to take Pettis on this one. Let me know what you guys think down there below. And let's get into the next fight on this card. I'm super excited for this, guys. Like I said, if you're going to buy one pay-per-view all year long, I think this is the one. Definitely halfway up to this point, up to July 7th. 2 title cards, Miocic versus Cormier, Holloway versus Ortega. Freaking phenomenal. Friends, you think your fireworks are on fire. This card is absolutely on fire. It's like Christmas came early. You've heard of Christmas in July. We got Francis Ngannou versus Derrick Lewis. And this isn't even the co-main or main event. What a phenomenal battle. One thing I can say coming out of this is I don't believe anybody comes out of this fight without significant damage. So hats off to both of these guys for taking very, very tough fight. Very risky fight. So when Derrick Lewis went down against Mark Hunt in June of last year, it's like everybody forgot about the 6-fight win streak with 5 knockouts that had occurred just before that. Possibly including Derrick Lewis, who temporarily retired. Let's not forget about what he did in that time, though. He just came back, though, in February, knocked out Marcin Tybura in the 3rd round for performance of the night. So back on track, right? And then he calls out Ngannou. Big streak for Derrick Lewis. Like I said, anybody can get caught by Mark Hunt. But Derrick Lewis has been knocked out a few times. Ngannou never has. Ngannou losing to Stipe following his own 6-fight UFC win streak to a title shot sees him keeping his #1 contender spot. Also comes into this about a 4-1 favorite against Derrick Lewis. I don't think that's quite so fair. But Ngannou's 4-inch reach advantage could definitely come into play. Lewis seems to be the better wrestler. Break this down. Only one man in the UFC has went the distance with Francis Ngannou. Of course, that's Stipe Miocic. Since he entered the UFC in December of 2015, the champ has been the only one to make it to the final bell. He's knocked out frickin' everybody. This fight is close to a coin toss. Obviously, another contender for fight of the night. But man, I cannot wait. This fight could last a few seconds or could go the entire thing. You want to talk about, power? It probably goes to Francis Ngannou. Very close, though. Accuracy and agility, Francis Ngannou. Wrestling, Derrick Lewis. Jiu-jitsu, let me think for a second. Who gives a shit? Because obviously neither one of these guys is doing any jiu-jitsu. Stamina, I think, actually goes to Francis Ngannou. Despite what a lot of people said, I thought he showed great stamina against Stipe Miocic, continuing to get up over and over again, even though he was clearly outmatched in the wrestling game. But yeah, like I said, this is big early favorite probably for fight of the night on a night where you have 4 or 5 fights that could be fighting for fight of the night and performance of the night. So hard to think that at least one fight bonus won't come out of this fight. I am going to pick Francis Ngannou by knockout. I think he gets it in the third. I think he tires Lewis down, but this could definitely easily go either way. And I'm just hoping to see a great fight. Let me know what you guys think down there below, and we'll get into the co-main and the main event here coming up. Stick with Fights with Friends. All right, friends, I hope you're really enjoying this extended preview of UFC 226, this eve of our nation's birthday, 4th of July. Miocic versus Cormier, Holloway versus Ortega, UFC 226. We often say a fight is a co-main event, but we know there's the main event and the co-main event. Co generally means equal. When we say a co-main event, though, we don't mean equal. Every once in a while, every blue moon, the UFC will have what they'll call a double main event. This is one of those cases. There are 2 main events, Stipe Miocic and versus Daniel Cormier, and Max Holloway versus Brian Ortega. Let's get into the first one. This is another one of those coin flips that I'd hate to be an odds maker. I'd hate to bet on this. Of course, Brian Ortega, 14-0. It's hard to say what that air of invincibility means, how much confidence that gives him. It's really hard to predict when you have a guy that hasn't tasted defeat. Most fighters you look at, Brian Ortega has 50% decisions. Most of them, when they have 50% decisions, it's because they were finishing people before they got in the UFC. Ortega is the opposite. He's finished all 6 of his victories in the UFC by submission or knockout. 3 submissions, 3 knockouts. That includes a knockout over the top Brad Tavares, who's almost never been stopped, and Frankie Edgar, a knockout. Frankie Edgar had never been stopped. I'm not sure why we continue to underestimate Max. Let's get into Max Holloway, though. Maybe he just doesn't look like a super athlete. Since losing to Conor McGregor, he's reeled off 12 straight victories, 9 finishes, and 5 bonuses. He's beaten some of the best at 145, except for Ortega. Max is certainly the biggest challenge of date for Ortega. Ortega is the toughest challenge for Max since he fought Conor, and that was back in 2013. That was almost 5 years ago. For all those Conor fans, they're saying, "Oh, well, Conor already beat Max Holloway." 5 years ago, and Max he's a very young guy. I want to say he was like 22 years old, maybe. He's a much better fighter now. I have a hard time seeing Ortega win on anything but knockout, and Max has never been knocked out, but neither had Frankie Edgar. Ortega's never been 5 rounds. I think that's going to be one of the big things. I think Max is smart. He's going to put together a game plan to take Ortega into the deep rounds, and I think Max finishes him in the 4th or 5th round. I think this is a great learning experience for Brian Ortega, though. His first loss. We'll see how he bounces back from it. Maybe he gets the knockout, maybe he gets the finish. I think he loses, but I think it's a great opportunity to learn, and I think it's going to be an incredible, competitive back-and-forth match, and once again, another contender for Fight of the Night. So many on this one. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know who you think will win. Will it be in still Max blessed Holloway, or will Brian Ortega walk away the new champion? Just 15 fights into his career. You guys let me know what you think. And we'll be breaking down Miocic versus Cormier here real soon. Well, hello, Fights of Friends. Finally, we are down to the main event. Daniel Cormier versus Stipe Miocic for the heavyweight championship of the world, and the chance to see the first fighter ever hold the light heavyweight title and the heavyweight title at the same time. I have flipped back and forth on who I think is going to win this fight so many times. It's hard to count. Daniel Cormier is, of course, one of the top light heavyweights to ever compete in the octagon. Alexander Gustafsson and Anthony Rumble Johnson are absolute assassins. He beat them both. His last fight against Volkan Ozdemir, he played Ozdemir's game. Ozdemir's game was a knockout game, and he knocked him out in the second round. His only loss is to the man thought to be the best ever, of course, John Jones. And right now, that legacy is shrouded in more controversy than Roseanne Barr's Twitter account. People say he's moving into Stipe's weight class. He's not a heavyweight. Well, look back in history. I know MMA fans have short memories, but let's go back to a little thing called Strikeforce. He was undefeated as a heavyweight. He went through Strikeforce's Grand Prix, beat Josh Barnett in the finals. Do you guys remember that fight, Antonio Silva against Mark Hunt? Back and forth. Daniel Cormier knocked Antonio Silva out in the first round. Antonio Silva had an epic back and forth war with Mark Hunt. For the entire 3 rounds, Hunt hit Silva with everything he could. One of the best heavyweight fights in UFC history, but Hunt couldn't put him away. Thought to be one of the greatest strikers of all time. Cormier knocked him out in the first round. Josh Barnett has been called the best catch wrestler in the history of MMA. Cormier out-wrestled him, out-catch wrestled him, dominated him to a 5-round unanimous decision. He will undoubtedly one day be in the UFC Hall of Fame. His opponent, Stipe Miocic, also has a good chance of meeting him there in the Hall of Fame. In his 14 appearances in the octagon, he has 8 fight performance bonuses. 8. 14 fights, 8 fight performance bonuses. That's pretty incredible. He really started to get my attention when he wrote the blueprint on how to beat Roy Nelson back in 2013. Put a phenomenal boxing job on Roy when Roy was Roy, not the Roy of today. This is 5 years ago. So, but a lot of people have used that blueprint to beat him since. So he's got a ton of power. He took the best Mark Hunt had to offer in 2015. Hunt was stopping everybody then. This is 3 years ago with Hunt. I knocked out Hunt in the 5th round. So I'm not sure how DC is going to knock him out. But like I said, DC's got tremendous power too. He would lose his first time against Junior Dos Santos. The first time he fought Junior Dos Santos, he'd lose by unanimous decision. He proved that he could get past adversity, proved he could get better. He came back 17 months later, knocked out JDS in the first round 17 months later. Then in a 16-month span leading up to his current defense against Francis Ngannou, he knocked out Andrei Arlovski, Fabricio Verdum, Alistair Overeem, and Junior Dos Santos, all in the first round, all in succession in a 16-month span. One of the most violent times in UFC heavyweight history, that 16-month span. You might be able to understand his frustration then with odds makers made him the underdog against Francis Ngannou, and the UFC heavily marketed Francis Ngannou against him when he was the champion. So the Pride of Cleveland obviously carried that chip on his shoulder after dominating Francis Ngannou when he actually denied Dana White the chance to put the belt around his waist. He slapped it away from Dana White, and Stipe's trainer put the belt around his waist. Big move. I better hope he keeps a hold of that title. He holds the record, though, for all-time defenses, of course, now consecutive defenses in the heavyweight division of the title. How much of that chip does he still take into the cage on July 7th against Daniel Cormier? Well, let's think. You're talking about two guys that have maybe two of the biggest chips on their shoulder in the UFC, and they're carrying those chips as UFC championship belts. Daniel Cormier for the doubt that has shrouded his losses to John Jones. Stipe Miocic, the lack of respect he's gotten from the UFC and from marketing in general. Just recently, they're finally beginning to market him a little bit. There are many different ways this fight could go. I was trying to think about, who would win this fight. Is there a clear answer to this? And I don't have a clear answer for you. And let me tell you why. I said that there's a lot of different ways this could go. Stipe could knock Daniel out quickly. Like I said, he's knocked just about everybody out recently, but Stipe. He has a tremendous 8-inch reach advantage, so you're looking at a John Jones type scenario, even more of a reach advantage. Stipe could keep him out on the end of his punches. DC could out-wrestle him. Stipe is an excellent wrestler. Nobody doubts that. He out-wrestled Francis Ngannou phenomenally. He's got one of the best takedown defenses also in the UFC. Daniel Cormier, though, is on another level. World-class wrestler, world-class takedown defense, even a notch or two above Stipe. Will the judges adhere to the new unified rules of MMA? That's my question mark. We've talked about it on here. Many thought Yoel Romero beat Robert Whittaker in their second match just recently, or at least tied him when he seemed to be on the verge of stopping Whittaker in 2 separate rounds. At least one of those rounds, most people, I thought both rounds that he almost stopped Whittaker in should have been 10-8 rounds. Not one 10-8 round was afforded. So given Stipe's power and DC's heart, we could easily be having this conversation again. I could easily see DC winning 3 rounds, Stipe hurting DC in 1 or 2 of those rounds, almost finishing him, DC coming back. At the end of the day, I believe it's a very close decision. I believe DC will be rocked by Stipe. I think Stipe will catch him a couple times. I think DC will get some takedowns. I give the advantage to the champ if the judges follow their own rules this time. They follow the unified MMA rules. If not, we could see DC retire and leave 2 divisions with vacant belts. And that would be history. I hope you've enjoyed this extended preview of UFC 226. I cannot wait to stream this. Like I said, as soon as I come back from vacation, I'm going to be streaming tomorrow from the War Zone. The next day, the 5th, PFL, stream 4 hours through. Then, Ultimate Fighter finale. Then, the entire card, UFC 226, that Saturday, all the way through. Absolutely huge weekend. Thank you guys so much for all of your support. All of you have a great, happy 4th. Go out and enjoy your family. And I will see you guys very soon. As always, I love you. I respect you. And I'll see your fine asses later.